my goodness, we're late. We need to start. Actually, I was just waiting for Mr. Lambert to show up, so I'd start the meeting once he arrived. All right. Mrs. Stewart, how are you? I know. You're a visitor, I know. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Hear ye, hear ye. I'd like to welcome you to Litchfield's Town Deliberative Session. My name is John Regan. I live at 9 Chase Brook Circle with my wife, Patricia. She's out there somewhere. There she is waving. And my sons and my dog. I'm both the school district and town moderator, and I'll preside over the meeting this afternoon. Mr. Reed, to my right, is our vice moderator, and he'll be offering guidance and support forever, I hope. A few announcements. State law prohibits smoking anywhere on school grounds. Please don't light up. Restrooms are located just past the auditorium on your right-hand side. Food and drink are not allowed in this auditorium. I think though many of us drink water, I think that might be okay, but don't be chowing down on subs. Concession sales don't exist today. It is against school policy to leave flyers on vehicles parked on school property, so please don't do that. Don't have any special announcements or special thanks. Before we begin the meeting, let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to invite the chair of the selectmen to come up and introduce the board. Mr. Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I appreciate the people coming to the town deliberative session. First off, let me present to you the people who are at the selectmen's side of the podium here. We have Terry Brian, who is both the town clerk, tax collector. The vice chair of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Steve Perry. Selectmen as well as state representative, Mr. George Lambert. Selectman, John Brunel. Selectwoman Patricia Jewett. Town council, Mr. David Lefevre. And our town administrator, Mr. Jason Hoke.
Thank you, Mr. Byron. And for the budget committee, Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's John Hart, Chairman. We have Mike Falzone, Vice Chairman, Elizabeth Miller, John York, who is the representative for the school board, Ray Peoples, and Bill Spencer. Thank you.
Before we begin, Mr. Byron has a short presentation. Mr. Byron.
Thank you very much. The Board of Selectmen had considered potential changes that we'd like to propose to the citizens of Litchfield and how we conduct our deliberative sessions. We're not proposing any changes in terms of how people would have the access to vote or to participate in deliberative sessions, but the board had made a conclusion that it may make sense to try and combine both the school as well as the town into one deliberative session so people can get an overall view of what's happening with the budgets for the community. The Board of Selectmen made a proposal to the school board to consider this and to try and do this potentially next year. The school board expressed their interest in pursuing it. At the school deliberative session, this was considered, and there was a large and, as the moderator said, resounding favorable opinion expressed about it. The format would be something that we would basically follow as having one deliberative session with feedback potentially from both boards at the deliberative session, as well as voting at that same time on any amendments that people would propose. This would allow for participation on one day rather than two. We would see this also as a small but cost savings anyways. It's our experience that other towns have used this approach and seen participation increase in terms of the voters. And as I said earlier, it allows the voters to get a big picture of what's budgets that are being proposed by both the school and the town. Our budget committee also currently shares two groups in one meeting during the budget hearing process. We are proposing that we would run this year as a straw poll, and if it is favorable by both the school deliberative and the town deliberative, we would then take and have the school board and the Board of Selectmen meet, try and hash out a format for these types of meetings, and go forward from there. So what I'd like to do, if the moderator will call a straw poll on this, I'd appreciate it.
Those in favor of combining the school and town deliberative sessions into one meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to proceed. Basic agenda is our standard agenda. I'll review the moderator's rules. We'll review the warrant articles. About halfway through, after Article 4 or 5 or so, I'll have a 5-minute break to offer the microphones up to anybody that would like to speak to pretty much anything. Good time to say thank you for things. I'll continue with the warrant articles and then we'll close. So, the rules and procedures for this meeting. Litchfield is operating under what is known as Senate Bill 2 procedure. This means that our function this evening is to review and discuss the warrant articles that have been presented here today and for us to vote on by official ballot on Election Day. Election Day this year is Tuesday, March 8th. The polls will be open at Campbell High School from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'll close them earliest at 7 p.m. At about 7 o'clock, I'll run outside and see if there's any runners trying to get in there to vote, and we'll keep it open for you if you're running. Not running for office, just running. According to state law, town and school district meetings are run by the moderator's rules. This means that the moderator sets the ground rules for the meeting. However, law also allows you to overrule the moderator's ruling by approving a motion to do so by simple majority vote. For this deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize a sponsor to speak about it. Then the moderator will open the floor for discussion. When you come to ask a question or discuss an article at any microphone here today, please clearly state your name and street address so that the clerk can hear you. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment to an article, he or she must have the amendment moved and seconded before it can be discussed. If we make no amendments to these warrant articles, then they'll appear on the ballot as you see them tonight. If you do make amendments to these warrant articles, then they'll appear on the ballot as amended. Amendments to warrant articles must be handed to the moderator in writing. Index cards are available here at the front. I have index cards if you've got pencils. We have index cards and pencils if you need something to write on. Note that an amendment cannot change the primary subject described in the article. The maker of a motion to amend an article will have the first opportunity to speak to it. Each proposed amendment will be brought to closure before any other amendment is discussed. So we won't have nested discussions of amendments. Yes, I was. No, not right now. We can discuss it later, George. The maker of a motion to amend an article will have the first opportunity to speak to it. Each proposed amendment will be brought to a closure before any other amendment is discussed. At the CHS auditorium, non-voters will sit in the corner in the right. Are there any non-voters in the auditorium today? So, could you position yourself over there, but please don't be involved in voting anything tonight. Would really appreciate that. There aren't that many. There are just 3 of you. And maybe the photographer. Okay. As you entered the building tonight, the ballot clerks gave each registered voter a sheet of yes/no ballots. I believe they were yellow. These are yours to use for secret ballots. Please do not drop them on the floor or leave them behind if you leave before the close of the meeting. Only those people who are in the checklist as qualified voters are permitted to vote to amend an article. If the moderator receives a complaint or notices a non-voter voting, then he will require the non-voter to leave the auditorium. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 5 voters make a written request prior to a voice, hand, standing, or division vote on the article. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any vote to amend an article just after the vote. After the vote is declared by the moderator and before any other business is begun. So you've got a short window there. Just make it known and I'll wait for you. Approval of all warrant article amendments at the deliberative session shall be by simple majority vote. A voice vote will be the primary method of voting. If the moderator cannot distinguish a clear majority with a voice vote, then a vote of standing will be taken. Active campaigning for your favorite warrant article, handouts, standing with signs is allowed, but outside the auditorium, not inside the room. Active campaigning within the auditorium, other than to discuss an article when invited to do so, is prohibited. The deliberative session is a forum at which we ask questions. More importantly, it's a place for debate. Proper respect and decorum will be expected at all times. Every effort will be made to give recognition to all wishing to speak. If you want to speak, then you must come to the microphones at the front of the room. Board members, if you're speaking as a board member discussing an article, you may remain on stage, use the center microphone. If you're offering your own opinion as a citizen, then please move to the floor. All those who speak are to keep their remarks pertinent to the motion. No negative motions will be in order, no personal attacks, no profanity. All speakers will direct their remarks to the moderator. When a question is asked, the moderator will call upon the appropriate person to respond to that question. The moderator will allow one follow-up question when others are waiting to speak and will not allow running discussions. A motion to call the question and stop discussion must be properly seconded before it can be considered. Voters who speak to an article may not immediately call the question in order to stop discussion about it. A motion to table an article will not be in order unless it is to table until a specific time and place before the close of this meeting. A motion to reconsider or restrict reconsideration of an article after discussion is closed will not be in order unless seconded and approved. Reconsidered articles must be discussed and closure reached before the end of the meeting. A motion to adjourn or recess will not be accepted until all warrant articles have been discussed. Members of boards and committee members and voters will refrain from using acronyms since we cannot assume that everyone knows what acronyms mean. About halfway through the meeting, we'll have a short 5-minute break where it's an opportunity for giving thanks and recognizing people that otherwise perhaps would not have been recognized. That's the moderator's rules. So the first point of order, it is your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak at this meeting. We don't have many of them tonight. It has been customary to allow employees, council, and non-registered residents to speak at these meetings. If you wish to continue to do so, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. So first thing I want to do is I'd like to just, in case we do have a secret ballot, I need some ballot takers. Mr. Allen, anyone else want to volunteer to hand out, to walk around with the ballots? If in fact, yeah, somebody up there would be good. Thanks, Jed. Okay. So here we go. The first article is a election of officers article. To elect by ballot the following town officers: town selectmen, three-year term; town budget committee members, 3-year term; 2 library trustees, 3-year term; 1 road agent, 2-year term; 1 town clerk tax collector, 3-year term; 1 trustee of trust funds, 3-year term; 1 cemetery trustee, 3-year term; and 1 treasury, 3-year term. Mr. Byron, would you like to speak to this?
No, sir.
I thought that's what you were going to do. Okay. Any discussion on the first article? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to the second. You'll find it on the ballot as written. So the second article is the operating budget, Article 2, to see if the town will raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote at the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,492,776. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,463,558, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Litchfield or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Section 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. It's also recommended by the Budget Committee 6-0. Mr. Byron to speak to the article.
Mr. Moderator, thank you very much. Just for those folks who are here tonight, as well as those who may be watching from home, if you should have in your possession copies of all the slides that are going to be presented tonight, and you should also have what's called the MS7, which gives you the overview of the finances of the town, as well as the default budgets and the warrant articles. Warrant articles will be in the presentation that you're seeing, so you'll see the exact copy there. Let me begin by saying that the Board of Selectmen this year looked towards keeping the budget as low as we could. The budget itself is presented in the following broad categories. Public safety was increased by $224,000. roughly. And the rest of them were pretty much decreased in terms of waste disposal, highways and streets. General government was increased by about 49,000, and the rest of them are relatively stable. That brings the budget for the town down from 2010 to 2011 budget by $51,000, or 52,000 is the better approximation. It's a decrease of about 1.1%. The intention of the selectmen was to try and come in as low as we could to ensure the citizens that any impact that school funding could have on the town would not also be complicated by any of the the town budget itself. In taking a look at how we as a community stand against other communities of roughly equivalent size, what I've done is constructed a graph that basically shows us in terms of cost per citizen for the services that the town gives to our community. This is for towns of populations between 5,000 and roughly 10,000 people. As you can see, Litchfield is the third from the cheapest, meaning that our services roughly of $527 per citizen represent some of the cheapest services that communities of our size provide. You should note that this is the 2011 budget that you're seeing presented today compared to data for the 2010 budgets of the communities that I use as the comparators. The reason for that is data on the 2011 budget for those communities is unavailable, while I had access to the 2010. Questions?
Do you have any further discussion on Article 2?
Jason Allen, 33 Chasebrook Circle. I'd like to amend Article 2 by $2,500.
Adding or?
Add $2,500.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? We have a second. Go ahead, you may speak.
I'm part of Litchfield Recreation Commission. Litchfield Recreation Commission's budget's gone from just over $100,000 in the past years. We're down to about $75,000 this year. A lot of these cuts have come out of programming and new activities. We've got a lot of new members on the Recreation Commission that are looking to increase the activities in the town for recreation. We're looking for a minimal $2,500. Most of that $2,500, if not all of it, will be paid back by the groups that use it. We're looking to be able to do CPR classes and get an instructor in there, first aid classes for coaches, run bingo nights for family members. All that needs to, we need funding to bring in the people to be able to do that. Again, we'll charge people to come in and do these events, which will go right back into that money, so it should be revolving an account.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to add $2,500, bringing the new bottom line budget to $4,495,276. Mr. Byron.
Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen were presented with this request by the Recreation Commission and had considered it. We suggested to the Recreation Commission that it be amended at deliberative session, and the Board of Selectmen are in favor of this request.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment? Questions? No? Okay, so we have a proposed amendment on the table to add $2,500 to the bottom line budget to read, to see if the town will raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote at the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,495,276. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,463,558, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Litchfield by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, Section 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget. All in favor of the amendment as proposed, please say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We have an amended operating budget bottom line. Oh, can I have the new total, please, again? Okay, thank you. Further discussion on Article 2? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to reduce the budget by the amount of $1,028 in order to reduce the conference cost for the tax collector and the town clerk.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, that's an illegal motion.
Why so?
There is an RSA that stipulates that the town must fund the town clerk tax collector.
It would still be funded. According to the website, then the cost for the conference was $50 last year, and accommodations to stay for the town clerk, who is also the tax collector, which is what you just said, is $772 for a single occupancy. You have $900 in the budget for the town and clerk, and also $900 in the budget for the tax collector, for a total of $1,800. So you can take the $772, add the $50 fee, and that's still well below the $1,800 that's in the budget.
Let me take your...
I'm not asking not to fund the conference. I'm asking to bring the number down closer to what the cost is.
Can I have your name, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Kathleen Follis, 8 Mike Lane.
I'm sorry, last name.
Follis.
So we have a proposed amendment to reduce the budget by $1,028.
I have the form that's actually from the New Hampshire clerk and town tax, New Hampshire
Sure.
tax collector and clerk office with the numbers on it.
Because they combined the conferences this year, we used to have 2 separate conferences, and that would be the cost of one. This year, the committees got together and we did combine the conferences into one full week instead of 2 3-days. So
Okay.
she is correct.
I'll withdraw my objection then, Mr. Moderator.
Okay.
That's
And
after we did budget.
does anyone have a quick calculator to do the new bottom line budget with this? 4,494,248. $4,494,248. Further discussion on the proposal to reduce the budget by $1,028 to bring us to a new operating budget of $4,494,248. No discussion. Yes, discussion.
Susan Seabrook, 18 Bear Run Drive. I was just wondering, is this always going to be a joint committee conference, or is there a possibility that
Split
the
again.
year after next it will not be, and then we'll have to add that into the budget?
This year, we decided to try it for 2 years. The tax collector committee and the town clerk committee got together, and we decided to cut the cost for the towns. We were going to try and do this for 1 year. We got a better deal with the hotels. We're going to see how it works for the 2 years. I guess they did this several years ago and it didn't work out so well, but we're trying a new program and hopefully it'll work out so that the cost is a lot less.
So then I think we should keep this in mind, that this is a 2-year adjustment. Well, we're going to vote on a new budget next year, but perhaps in another year or so we might have to add that into the budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to reduce the bottom line budget by $1,028. Hearing none, I'd like to take a vote. Those in favor of reducing the town budget from 4,495,276 to 4,494,248, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. So we now have a new bottom line budget of 4,494,248. Further discussion on Article 2, the bottom line budget. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Jason Garrett, 11 Perry Court. Chief O'Brien may be the guy to answer this. I already asked him the question out in the hallway, or I gave him a heads up. I'm looking for, before I vote on the final thing, I want to want to know what the school resource officer and the DARE officer who provide services to the school. We have, I have 2 young children, so I haven't had much exposure at the high school yet, but I understand that we have quite a drug problem in town, and I want to understand what we're getting for those services, because we don't have any reports on the official reports that go to the state as far as drug use and drug abuse, although we know it happens. So I'd like to know what those officers are actually doing in our schools to justify those dollars.
I'd like to call on Chief O'Brien, if he could, come down and speak to that.
Good morning. We have 2 officers. One handles the DARE program. He's been working with us since 1972. He's got a number of years of experience doing that. We have a second officer that works in Campbell High School that does the school resource officer. He's got over 20 years of experience and just a vast amount of dealing with children and problems and stuff like that that happen in the schools.
Are those full-time positions?
No, they're part-time.
And so I'm not opposed to even adding more hours if it was to mean that we could better police our schools for drug abuse or drug use. I guess my question is what are the numbers as far as incidents? I mean, you may not have that with you, but the point is I don't see any records of arrests or any official notices to the state which are required that have to do with, I got the numbers from Dr. Collar, almost non-existent. And so either we have a drug problem and we need those folks in school, or we don't. We would get reports of, I mean, I know they run the dogs every now and then, but not to say that it isn't valuable. My point is I'm wondering how much we're paying for a service that really, what results does it have? I want to be able to measure those results, and I don't see any measurable results knowing that there is a drug problem, but then we have no official record of what's actually happening. Unless that can be provided, and I'd love to have it.
We do have numbers. The names would be redacted out of anybody that's been arrested because they're juveniles. They don't just handle drugs. There's a plethora of other items that happen in the school, fights, you have bullying, different types of things that happen during the day.
No, I know. I'm not trying to make it a debate. I'm trying to understand. Because when I look in last year's town report, I think there was 2 arrests for drug use. And from what I understand, there's a considerable drug issue here in the high school. I'm wondering, is it that we need more hours in the high school then to better deal with that drug problem?
Under police standards and training, a part-time officer that is not full-time certified is limited to 1,300 hours a year. Cannot work over that. The one officer that we have here is a retired full-time officer that is now part-time, and he can work 32 hours a week. And he's limited to that because of his retirement.
All right, well, I'm not prepared to cut the budget for it, but I would ask the chief kind of be prepared for next year, because I'd like to see, myself, I'd like to see some results that are tangible and documentable. Is that a word? That you can document that shows that those dollars are being wisely spent. Because I will move to cut it next year.
Just to comment on this, that if we have a program that is effective, you would expect in terms of training the children not to use drugs and working with the schools not to use drugs, that we would be in a situation where we would have a low arrest rate. So my view of that is that potentially the system is working and the chief's DARE offices and things are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Byron, I respectfully disagree. Parents come to us all the time expressing, it's kind of a taboo subject in town. Nobody really wants to talk about. We have a very serious drug problem in town, and I've been made aware. I kind of was in the same position where I kind of said, what are you talking about? There's no police reports, there are no school reports, therefore there must be none. I've been presented with much more evidence showing that we have a bigger drug problem. It's one that we choose not to discuss, but we have a drug problem in the school. So to say that what we're doing, just because we don't document or have numbers that show that it's happening, in no way means that we don't have a drug problem. I'd much prefer to have, to be more out in the open, so that parents like I was that said, what drug problem are you talking about? And then all of a sudden we start seeing it. I don't want my kids to show up at high school and then find out there's a drug problem. You know, if there is one, which I believe there is, we need to address it. Just because we have no numbers to show people, you know, we can bury our head in the sand and say there isn't. See, there's no numbers. I'm sorry, that's just faulty logic.
There's actually reports written on every single incident that happens in town, including schools. Now, if there may be a drug arrest that ends up under an alternative resolution, where you're not criminally charging a juvenile, there's an alternative resource that they're going to get treatment for that instead of just punishment.
Oh, I understand, but the arrest would still be an arrest, and that would be...
Not necessarily. It could be a police information report that's documented.
And where are those not public records?
They're not public records because they have juveniles' names in them.
Do we, no, I understand, but those could be redacted. My point is this, is parents in this community should be made aware that there is a drug problem if there is one. I'm making I'm making the case that there is a drug problem, and people need to have that information so they can better make choices for their kids. If there's no documented evidence for parents to believe, and I went down that path myself. I said, show me the data, show me the proof. There are no official stated documents you can look at to say there's a drug problem. But if you were to ask parents of the high school, they all know there's a drug problem. So we can, I want people to understand, and so that if we do need additional resources, we can make educated, because quite honestly, if it took putting another officer in this school to get rid of the drug problem that we all don't want to talk about, I'd fund it. I'd have no problem with it. But you can't say add an officer when you can't prove there's a drug problem, other than this big elephant in the room. You kind of see what I'm saying?
Well, we're not looking to add an officer.
Well, you know what, though? The parents in this community might. If there's a drug problem in this school and we need more resources in it to ferret it out, I'd absolutely stand right up here and say, put another officer in here to help fix it. You see, that's the point. You might not want one, but that's if it takes another officer to clean this school of drugs, I'd be willing to fund it. But we have to first have the discussion that says we have a drug problem in the school.
It sounds like there's got to be a discussion between the police
We will.
department, the
Thank
school
you.
department, and the parents on this subject to talk about what's being done to address the issues that exist.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on Article 2? I don't see any runners. Okay. So you'll find Article 2 on the ballot on March 8th as amended with a total budget of $4,494,248. Thank you. Article 3 is Police Union Contract. Shall the town vote to approve the cost items for wage and related costs that have been included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the town of Litchfield and the Council 93 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, which provides for the following increases in wages and benefits. For 2011, $734. For 2012, $13,716 estimated. For 2013, $14,127 estimated. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $734 for the 2011 fiscal year, such sum represented in the additional cost attributable to the increase in benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels. This collective bargaining agreement covers the full and part-time patrol officers and full and part-time dispatchers. This contract contains no raise for 2011, cost of living adjustments based on the Boston CPIW for 2012 and 2013, with such adjustments to be not less than 1% and not to exceed 2% in 2012, and not to be less than 2% and not to exceed 3% in 2013. Additionally, the contract includes opportunities for a buyout for not taking town health insurance and introduces an earned time program in 2013, replacing the current vacation, sick, and personal time program, which is expected to reduce overtime costs. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. It's recommended by the Budget Committee 6-1. Mrs. Jewett, Mr. Lambert's going to speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Yep.
I've been accused of mumbling into this microphone, so if you can't hear me, please raise your hand. Okay, good. We just passed a police union contract recently. Which was an attempt to increase the salaries of our police department so they were competitive with other agencies in our surrounding town. But after we passed that, we still had a few remaining problems, one of which is that we spend an awful lot of our budget on overtime. Part of that is because of the way that we structure vacation, sick, and personal time, and we disincentivize officers to work more time because we say, if you don't take your vacation days, they go away. So it's not in their best interest to actually do that, so we have to replace those shifts. Our attempt in this contract was to actually balance that and reduce the overtime cost in our police department. We've also gone out and put limits in on increases. The first, in 2012, we actually have a band. We say we're going to give you a minimum of a cost of living adjustment that is 1% but capped at 2%, and then we've stepped that up 1% the following year. A lot of people are saying, well, why is it we should go and do those? I work in industry. I'm not necessarily going to get an adjustment. The problem that we end up with in the police department is that as surrounding departments are doing that, the longer we don't do it, the less competitive our rates are with people who could potentially go to work in another community. We cannot go and hire police officers tomorrow if we decided we needed 10 more until they've actually gone through certification and training with police standards and training. That puts us at a disadvantage if the number of available police officers in the state is too low. We have to pay whatever it is to either hire them from someone else or to fund the overall cost of training of those officers. Litchfield, with a lower base, has the potential to be a training ground for officers who come and work here for a couple of years, get to know our community, and then leave. So our attempts within this contract have been to offset some of those so we don't end up in that training ground situation and end up with these large fees that have to do with training officers who aren't here for a long time. This contract includes a buyout for not taking health insurance. One of the large expenses we have in our police department is if you are getting health insurance from the town and you're married, we spend a lot of money on that. If someone has an opportunity to take health insurance from their spouse or through another mechanism, we would like to give them an opportunity to reduce the cost to the taxpayer and give them a piece of that back as an incentive, which has worked very well in other departments. We've also constructed a mechanism for an earn time program, which we need to transition into in 2013, that will replace our current program for 6 days personal time and vacations, so that those the time that the officers don't spend actually goes into a little bucket, a little fund, and they can use them at their discretion, and they can instead, if they have the availability, work overtime for us, and then we don't have to pay the overtime extra fees. They're already trained, they already know our departments, and so this actually gives us a lot of flexibility and gives them an option for cash. This contract also gives us the ability to implement random drug testing within our department, which we saw as something that would be a real benefit and an asset. The union actually agreed with us on that. They said it's a great thing to put in, and so it's I think it's a fantastic concession for our department. Earn time is a little bit complicated. There's a slide in here. If any of you think you need a further explanation of earn time, if I see a couple hands go up, I'll detail all of this, or I can keep going because I think I've covered most of it. And there are no hands. Were there any questions?
Yes, further discussion, questions on Article 3.
Spencer, 9 Cranberry Lane. Could you tell me what how this would affect the retirement costs that we're getting from the state? Does this better us in any way by reducing? I mean, some of it, isn't it? They accumulate the overtime. Is that a part of the base that goes into the retirement, or this earned overtime? Does that then stack up, and we have a large amount of money that's added to their base pay that then becomes larger retirement cost?
I don't believe that this will have a significant impact. The time at which we have a risk in the state retirement system for that accumulation ends up over in the last 3 years of our total employees before they go into retirement, for which our total number of those, I believe, is 2. Is that right? Yes, 2. So we have 2 officers who could potentially benefit from that, but there are some caps that allow them to extract some money out. But this is not going to allow somebody to go and create one of these enormous problems for large retirement expense. We also have in the contract a cap that says you can't overwork more than the potential state limit. They worked very hard to make sure we didn't have a retirement system problem there.
Yep, that's correct.
Mr. Lambert, how are you?
I am very well. How are you this afternoon, sir?
I'm well, thank you. My first comment, and I understand it's a concession, as you said, but implements random drugs testing for all of our unit employees. I'm amazed, honestly, that that wouldn't be a default thing that we'd have to concede on, that those in charge of protecting us from drug abuse, not to say that they're not susceptible to drug abuse themselves, but to say, hey, I'll take a test, but to say that's a concession is incredible. That they would have had to concede is beyond anything. But so last year we approved a contract that equalized pay to the local communities, yet now we're already going to give them 2% and 3% raises. Do we know what Social Security is paying for increase this year for most government programs? 0. There's a federal freeze on COLAs also. My point is I understand this is a bargain thing, but why? And granted, I'm glad that we have a choice to vote on it rather than it just show up in the budget. The point being, though, is when we're negotiating this, there's give and take, and for me to say that the give and take, the middle ground was 2% and 3%, is quite outrageous.
I would agree with you 100%, Jason. It's completely outrageous because every year that healthcare costs go up for our employees, that they have to match, going up at the rates that they're going up, our employees are in fact taking a pay cut. Because I actually started in the same position as you. It's, hey, wait a minute, these are going, people aren't getting raises, and these costs are out of control. And so I said, no, let's start at 0. I wanted it to be 0 because I was concerned about the evergreen clause.
Right.
And when they actually brought in the numbers, they say, look, we contribute a portion into our medical costs differently than other employees. And those numbers actually mean that we take a decrease in pay every year because we don't control the healthcare cost. That meant that the Board of Selectmen, in part of that discussion, was saying we need to look at the options we give our police department for reducing those healthcare costs as well, so they're not taking a pay cut even at these 1 to 2% range and 2 to 3% range increases. And that's why we gave them an opportunity to buy out of our health insurance if they had another option to offset those costs, because those numbers have been going up at a rapid rate.
Right, you're doing a good job defending the position of the board, but here's the issue. I'm paying $1,000 this year more in my health insurance, and I'm not making more. I can't go to my employer and say, hey, I need 2 and 3% to offset the cost you're downshifting on me on healthcare. So believe me, we all understand what that means, because that's how we live. I don't believe that public sector employees should have a better deal than those paying those public sector employees. It's certainly a philosophical difference. I'm not going to argue right now, but in my opinion, when we negotiate contracts, it should reflect the times that we're in, not a standard quo or status quo type environment where they just continue to get raises. In these times, we're down to nothing. So should they. They're no different. And then, of course, you mentioned Evergreen, but as we know, that's probably going to get repealed this year. So
I am fairly confident that the Evergreen is getting repealed this year.
Right, so it's not an issue to deal with anymore. Thank you.
Susan Seabrook, 18 Bear Run. I just have a quick question. What is the buyout amount if you choose not to have health care?
Hold on. Jason will have that for me. I would try to do it from memory, but I don't want to get it wrong on television. The buyout cost will reduce the town's expense by 50%. So if someone opts out of their healthcare cost, it means that they the employee would get half of what the town would normally spend on healthcare costs for that employee, and the taxpayers would save that same amount.
That's a great explanation, but I wanted the dollar amount, like in the school system, if you buy out, you get $1,000 back. I wanted the dollar amount.
Oh, okay. It would depend on the employee, but hold on, let me see if I can get somebody to give us a number. The numbers are actually pretty big. It's going to be around $3,500 savings to the town, and $3,500 increase to an employee who is taking single benefits. Married employees are going to be more.
So the police officer that chooses not to receive insurance,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, health benefits from the town, would receive about $3,500?
They would receive about $3,500 in additional income, and then the town would actually save on a per employee basis another $3,500.
Okay, because that's a huge discrepancy with our other town contract, and that's with the teachers' union. And I was
I
just
didn't
wondering-
negotiate that contract, ma'am.
No, I'm not
I-
laying blame. I'm just saying it's a huge difference. I'm in full support of our police officers. They're fantastic. I applaud this whole contract, and I think it's wonderful that they're finally being raised to surrounding towns. I just had that question purely on a selfish
Well,
question, because that's what the school does. $1,000 back if you don't take insurance.
and that's probably a really good plan. What we want to do is incentivize the employees to do it because we wanted to save the taxpayers money. And basically, if it wasn't enough, we might not get enough to do it, and the more we could get to do it, it seemed like a better plan.
You're also dealing with a lot less employees, and I think it's a great incentive to not take the health care, as the health care costs are rising up probably as we speak.
I would agree. If anybody over there wants my help negotiating the school contract, my number is 603-206-1822. They can call me anytime. It would be my favorite thing to do, I can assure you.
Sir.
My name is Nick DeLeva, Cutler Road. Not to take out the violin here for a sad song, I just want to point out that we all need to consider making sacrifices, because a lot of us don't have a choice. I'm fortunate I still have my job, but it came with a cost. Over these since 2009, I've taken 2 pay cuts. Over 10% pay was cut. Now since January, because of, and that was off the top, straight salary cut. Now, because of medical costs going up, my pay was reduced another 9.5%. And again, just for the record, it's something we need to consider, because this cannot keep going on. And this is with all due respect to the police officers and all the people who are protecting us. And I appreciate that, and I honor what they do. But I'm responsible for my family. I'm taking a hit. I have no choice. Either that or it's don't work at all. Now I've become a burden on everyone else here. So I think it's something that should be considered with a little more seriousness, that we all need to scale back just a little bit. Now, I'm looking forward. I'm an optimist. Things will turn around. Things will get better. When it gets better, then we can reconsider things. But right now, there are too many people hurting.
If I might respond. I agree with you 100%, and you'll see in the numbers over here that what's not reflected in this, in a way that we can justify, because we don't know, is what the reductions will be in this previous slide where it says estimated costs for 2012 and 2013. In these estimates, we haven't subtracted any of the reduction or savings to our town for spending less money on overtime for our police officers, which actually costs us 150% of the hour cost for our police officers for overtime, which the budget committee actually asked us to go and find a way to reduce because it was out of control on a regular basis. Is that right, or do I remember that incorrectly? They said get it under control. this actually could significantly reduce the costs in our police department rather than increase them. So the big win here isn't just their 1 or 2% raise, but it's the reduction of the overall expense in that department, which is going to be significantly more than a $13,000 increase in 2012 and a $14,000 increase in 2013 that you won't see until we actually get to those budgets. Earn time gives us the same benefit. So we actually believe that this will be a cost reducer over the long term. Is that right? From the union side, did you actually, when we were discussing it, agree with that statement? That the overall cost of the town should actually go down rather than up? And the union guy, the union representative in the back from the police department is shaking his head yes.
Up and down, yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Garrett.
Yes, round numbers was $3,500 for a single. What is it for a married employee?
Hold on just a second.
Round numbers. A lot more. Well, while you're looking that up, I guess my point is this: if the benefits were not as good or better with, let's just say, a spouse. Okay, so a single person, I mean, you're looking at a individual who would buy insurance. Okay, so if it's a single and they're moving away or not buying insurance and we're paying them $3,500, they're probably not buying insurance anyway, because if they're not taking our insurance, where are they getting it from?
Right.
They're not employed. So that $3,500 goes straight to them that they wouldn't have purchased insurance for anyway. A married person is going to take their spouse's insurance, not because it provides less service and higher copays. They're probably taking it because it's a better insurance. I have the same dilemma in my household. We decide from year to year, because all of our plans change from year to year, whose is better this year, and we jump ship every year. Neither of us in our household get the payoff from our employer for not taking their insurance. You either take it or you don't, and we have to decide from year to year which spouse is getting it. So I understand why we're doing it. I understand because it gives us lower costs, but the point is people are going to jump ship based upon who's got the better deal. The reason we want them off ours is we have the better deal. Public employees' benefit plans greatly exceed the private sector. So of course we want them off our plans. The problem isn't buying people off to get off them. It's negotiating a plan that's commensurate with what the average person who's paying it plan is. The reason we want them off is because we're giving them the greatest benefits in the world. So we give them the greatest benefits, but then we pay them to get off. In my mind, that's just a double negative. So let me just finish my point and I'll go sit down. So I understand that the overall increases are going down, but see, we're giving them all these additional benefits and then kind of saying, don't look at this over here. Look at the overall costs that are going down. We made cuts in other areas to get the bottom dollar down. I make the position those cuts could have been made anyway, and then keep all these benefit plans commensurate with the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. I would like to say that the union has made a request of the town, which is to give them more options so that they can actually contribute less because they're feeling the increases as well. Our numbers are based on the minimum cost for the insurance that we would offer them. And if we have a family plan opt-out, the total cost for that is $16,760, which we can round to $8,300. The town will save $8,300 for each person who opts out of the family plan. Does that answer your question, sir?
Mr. Bohm.
Thank you. Ralph Bohm, 6 Gibson Drive. For the buyout, do the employee have to have been insured the previous year and that's what they're buying out? Or can they just say, hey, I want the family plan? No, I'm going to do a buyout.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer.
The buyout would be determined once a year. It would be based on what the employee would otherwise be eligible for. So there would be a decision point each year. So it would be the point at which it would be if they enrolled in our plan and we would have to engage at our renewal point in July, what's that employee eligible for? And that's when we'd make the determination.
Further discussion on Article 3. Mr. Spencer was standing up waving his arms before. Now I guess he did. Okay, good. Further discussion, Article 3.
My name is Carol Bissett. I live at 3 Birch Street. I just wanted to mention about the flex plan that 50% of what the cost is that you're talking about is not going to all go back into the employee's pocket. 2,500, I believe, is the amount of money. 2,500 will go into the flex plan.
Right. We'll top out their flex spending account so they don't have out-of-pocket costs for for prescriptions and other care, and to offset co-pays for any of their health insurance out-of-pocket costs.
Because we haven't talked about the flex plan.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
so people know that we do have that flex plan.
Yeah. Does that make sense to everyone, by the way? Okay. So we, instead of all of the money going directly into the pocket of the police officers who take advantage of this, part of the money in the expense goes into we cap out the employee's flexible spending account so that they offset any of their medical expenses and co-pays and other things. But if they don't actually spend all of that money, anything that they don't spend at the end of the year comes back to the town, if I understand that correctly? Yes. So basically, it allows them to have an offset for their co-payments and other medical expenses that they would normally pay out of pocket.
Yeah, I think we're all familiar with flexible savings accounts. Those are the ones that we pay for ourselves out in the private sector. Because, if we want a flexible savings account, we have to take money out of our paycheck, put it in the account, and then use it as we go. We don't get I understand it's coming from the buyback, and they don't get to go spend it on coffee or something. But the fact of the matter is, we still have to pay for it.
Yes, but if you pay for it out of your paycheck and you don't spend it all, your employer gets it. In this case, if they don't spend it all, the taxpayer gets it. Yes, we're the employer, and you're paying the bill, except for if they don't use it, if they don't need all of that money, it comes back into our general fund.
Further discussion on Article 3. Hearing none, you'll find it on the ballot as written. Article 4, Highway Block Grant. Shall the town include as part of the regular operating budget annually road and drainage improvements that would be funded with the annual New Hampshire Department of Transportation Highway Block Grant money? This is an advisory warrant article. This is recommended by the school board 5-0, and it's recommended by the budget committee 7-0. What did I say, school board? I didn't mean that. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the budget committee, and the school board doesn't get a vote. Mr. Hawk. Mr. Hawk was going to discuss this.
Yes, that's Mr. Hoke.
Hoke.
Just as an introduction to make sure that everyone's familiar with Jason, Jason joined us back in August as our town administrator based upon the warrant article passed this year. So I'd like to formally introduce him, which I was delinquent in doing in terms of making sure that you knew that he was a new add to the town government. But I will turn this over to Jason to speak to as the administrator.
Each year, the town gets money passed through from the State Department of Transportation for road maintenance and improvements called Highway Block Grant funds. They are used here for regular routine road investment programs. This past year, the work that you probably saw in Albuquerque is funded through these monies. Right now, the town uses a mechanism where monies coming in one year are set aside and used for various projects in a year or years after they've come in. And those proposed projects aren't listed as part of our current budget in the current year. One of the requests of the town's auditors is that we place this money into the operating budget. So procedurally, what this would mean is we'd show the revenue coming in, and as part of the proposed highway budget, we would be listing that expense in the operating budget for that year, and we would have likely identified within that budget the projects for that year. Basically, two things. One, the audit recommendation is simply a bookkeeping piece. Second piece is we're moving numbers on the books of the town. We're not spending new money. We're not raising new money. The impact on your property taxes should be a neutral effect because we're just changing a timing issue. That's why you'll see on this article there's no raised appropriate language.
Further discussion on Article 4.
Highway block grant funds are for specific purposes, right? So in other words, the state gives us a handful of money to maintain our roads and
Right. Yeah,
infrastructure.
there's a couple things written out in state law, mainly maintaining, repair, reconstruction of roads.
And what happens to the money if you don't use it?
It simply sits unspent and carries over to a future year.
But it has to be used for that specific
It has to be
issue.
used for those purposes that are outlined in state law.
Okay, so if we put it into our budget, does it then change that designation at all?
No, it shouldn't. If we're gross appropriating it, we will show, the number's about 180, so 1,000. So you show 180,000 coming in, and then we will list the $180,000 of projects in that highway budget.
Right, no, but I understand. But once you move it into the budget then and it becomes listed, if you spent half of it, would that money then just go to the general fund, or would it still be highway block grant funds?
The use of the money is still restricted, so it would pass through the general fund. So I could imagine a situation, for instance, where if you put 180,000 in, you said, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z roads, and for whatever reason you do X and Y roads and don't do Z. What the recommendation would be, so it doesn't get sort of rolled onto the general fund, would be that at the end of the year, the selectmen would encumber the monies for that unfinished project to make sure it's available for a future year.
But could it be used for other reasons, is my point.
It can only be used, I'm not trying to avoid your question, but it can only be used for the reasons that are outlined in state law. So repair, reconstruction, highway operation.
Okay, so what impact do we have then as a town if we don't do this?
If we don't do this, we will continue to do the way that the town has been doing it now, where we bring the money in the current year, and at the end of the current year, it gets transferred to a separate restricted fund for that purpose, and it's spent basically a year in arrears. And one of the concerns about that is there is less transparency with the use of that money than incorporating it into the overall budget process.
I guess I just don't see that, because in my mind, I think if you have a fund that's for highway block grant funds, and even though it lags a little bit, it still sits there, and that's all it can be used for anyway. So why it wouldn't be transparent, I don't see yet. What impact has this had on us, other than your apparent transparency issue? Are we not using the money appropriately? I mean, I would imagine we are using it appropriately. What I'm saying is, what impact, what have we not been able to do with the system as it is? Why do we need to change it, other than some administrative issue?
It's really an administrative issue. When auditors make recommendations, we make a good faith effort to respond to their recommendations.
No, I understand.
And that's really what this is. There's not an operational issue. There's no problem. There's nothing that the money hasn't been used inappropriately or the incorrect way. It's basically auditors made a recommendation, and we're trying to respond to that.
I got you. The general fund issue is my only sticking point. I'm afraid of the money going in the general fund, and then could be used for other things. Not to say that you all would do that, but the possibility exists.
Mr. Garrett, there's two portions of the general fund. There's an unreserved fund balance and a reserve fund balance. Highway block grant money is part of what's called the reserve fund balance. It can only be spent, whether it's in the general fund or in the budget, on highway work. It doesn't matter where it is. It can only be spent on highway work.
Further discussion, questions on Article 4? Hearing none, you'll find it on the ballot as written. So we're at that point, the session comments section. At this point in time, I'd like to invite anyone in the audience to the microphone to discuss topics that are otherwise not directly associated with any of the warrant articles presented this evening. 5 minutes. Thank yous. I'd like to thank the boards for all the work they do. Okay, we'll go on. Article 5, to see if the town will enter into contract with the Pennachuck East Utilities to assume responsibility for fire protection charges for water system users. And further, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $69,989 for that purpose. This amount represents the cost of 3 months of service in 2011 and is apportioned from an estimated annual cost of $279,952. If this article is approved, future appropriations for fire protection charges will be included in the operating budget of the town. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-0, and it's recommended by the Budget Committee 6-1. Mr. Lambert.
This is one of those things that often gets categorized with the phrase cost shifting. This cost shifting is because Litchfield participates in paying for their hydrant fees differently than most other communities. Because as the community was building out, only certain areas of the town had the benefit of fire protection and fire hydrants. To bring the town into a more consistent usage with other communities, there's a proposal for us to go to the Public Utilities Commission and ask to have Litchfield switch to the way that other communities like Raymond do this. They've just recently Raymond just switched, as we're talking about right now. We had a request from our citizens about 1.5 years ago that said, we think this is a problem because on our water bills we're paying for it, but people who don't have a hydrant or who don't connect to Pennachuck water but have a hydrant in front of their house and get benefit from the hydrants aren't paying. The question put before the voters is, should the town distribute the cost of the hydrant system across all of your tax bills based on your property value rather than having every individual who is currently hooked up to Pennachuck water get charged around $13 a month? So this will move a cost for some people off of their water bill and into their tax bill. For people who don't currently use Pennachuck water, they don't see the same cost shifting, but if there was a fire, there's a potential under the Public Utilities Commission agreement that if the fire service comes to your house and uses water from those hydrants, they will send you a large bill for your usage of the water from the hydrants. It's sort of like insurance. The plan is to get the town, and this is the request of the voters. We put this out on a warrant article last year and said, would you like us to go and look at a contract? The voters said yes. They said, we want you to tell us what it'll be. So we went out, we have discussed it, talked to our lawyers, talked to the Public Utilities Commission, and come up with a plan at the request of the voters to say this is how much it is. This is, if we implement this, we'll end up distributing that cost evenly over the property values. People who have right now a house that's $200,000 sitting next to a house that's $600,000 right now pay exactly the same water fee if they're connected to Pennachuck. So this creates a little change because we can't tax you that way. They will base the cost on your value of property. So it's a little bit different. It's not they're going to pay less, you're going to pay more. It's completely shifted or evenly distributed. It will. There's some little problems in the mathematical formulas, but basically allows everyone in the town to contribute if that's the choice of the voters. And I'm sure that was confusing. I have more slides to answer more questions. Go ahead.
Mr. Bohm.
Before I forget my question. Do we know the exact numbers that Pennachuck is getting now from all the people that pay the $12 to $13 a month? Is it less or equal to or more?
The rate is set by the Public Utilities Commission, and the town will be taking over what they say is the operational cost of those hydrants, which is how they divide up that bill. So they're not making any more money, they're not making any less money, and that won't change because the Public Utilities Commission will fix it during the rate adjustment at every interval.
But do we know what they are collecting now?
Yes, that's how we came up with the number. Or we know what they told our lawyers is the total revenue they collect. I haven't actually confirmed it with the Public Utilities Commission, but they told our lawyers this is the amount.
What I've always found interesting in this, and this is something we need to deal with at the state level, but considering that the main reason for the hydrants now is for Penachuk to flush the lines.
Well, I don't know if that's technically true, but as long as they're willing to flush the lines in front of my house when there's a fire, I'm happy with that.
Further discussion on Article 5. Yes, ma'am.
Pat Spencer, 9 Cranberry Lane. There's one dissenter from the Budget Committee on this. With that
Who
person-
dissented?
There was one dissenter
One person
on the Budget
dissented
Committee.
on the Budget Committee. Who dissented and why is probably the next question. Well, then get up here.
Wow. You just got called out, Bill.
This is not a setup, because I really came today vowing not to get up at the mic at all. And Sue, you said the same thing, and you did get up. No, I voted against it because when we got this warrant article, we were asked to vote on it that evening. And I had specific concerns with the way it was written because it said that if it was passed, that we would start paying the bill as of April 1st. And it was clear to me that that would not happen or could not happen because there's a regulatory process that has to go through to get the tariffs refiled. We had a brief discussion about that at the budget hearing, but nothing occurred that evening. So I wasn't ready to vote for it because I knew the dollar numbers were wrong on it. Now, the selectmen have since adjusted the dollar numbers to make it effective October 1st, which is a reasonable date. Now, would I still vote for it? Probably not, because I don't believe in my mind that the town should be picking up 100% of the cost. I can see them picking up a portion of the cost, but I don't see them picking up 100% of the cost. But I'm not going to make that motion today.
Further discussion on Article 5.
I'm going to point out that he was absolutely right, which is why we adjusted the number down from the original draft of the warrant article. And that's the MS76 shows the higher amount because the Board of Selectmen adjusted it as he suggested. So congratulations to Bill Spencer. He's almost always right on the numbers.
Further discussion on Article 5. Hearing none. We have a question.
My understanding is that as developments are thrown up in the town, then they are asked to extend out hydrant service into the areas of the town that do not have access. Is there a projection for when all of the town will be serviced by or have access to hydrants, since the whole town under this would be paying for the hydrants?
Based on the large stack of documents that I have read, the estimate of when the entire town will be covered is absolutely never.
Okay.
Because the cost of the build-out for the hydrants for some of the older sections of towns are incredibly expensive. And so, and the way that the law works is that the Public Utilities Commission or the water company can't go and do the expansion. So we would have to come to the voters and say, hi, residents of Litchfield, we want to go spend millions of dollars, actually, if I understood correctly, tens of millions of dollars, to fund that as a community, probably bond it out, or have the residents in those areas specifically pay for it, just like we have to do in a new development, because we can't go out and build out speculatively as part of the water district and make the current subscribers pay for expansion to non-subscribers. So the law is written in such a complicated way that unless this community picked up the cost for it in total, it won't happen. And I don't remember quite how many tens of millions of dollars it was, but it was a huge number. So I don't think it'll happen.
And if this passes, would this open us up legally to, if the entire town is asked to pay for the hydrants, then the entire town would be required to have equal access to the hydrants? Would that legally open us up to that?
No, not
and
at
then
all.
open us up to the millions of dollars?
No, it won't. Or actually, no one has told me it would, and nothing I've read would indicate that. It's probably the better legal disclaimer over there.
Further discussion, any questions on Article 5? Hearing none, you'll find it on the ballot as written. Article 6, land use change tax. To see if the town will vote to deposit 50% of the revenues collected pursuant to RSA 79-A, the land use change tax assessed when property is removed from current use, in the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund previously established in accordance with RSA 36A, Section 5, Paragraph 3, and to deposit 50% of the revenues in the town's general fund. The purpose of the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund is to purchase land, conservation or trail easements, or the purchase of development rights. This article modifies an approval in 2003 to deposit 100% of the revenues collected in the fund. The 2009 audit reported a balance in this fund of $882,317. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. It's also recommended by the Budget Committee 6-1. Mr. Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is a warrant article put forth by the Board of Selectmen to allow the citizens to reconsider what was done in 2003. Currently, land greater than 10 acres, or if it is undeveloped forest or unproductive land, can be put into what's called current use. Current use land basically allows the land to sit idle, and it provides the property owner with a tax decrease or a lower tax rate because it does not go into the development pool. The idea right now is that once land is taken out of current use, there is a tax of 10% of the full assessed property value that's charged to the landowner as a penalty for taking it out of current use and developing it. The current use tax today is categorized as revenue for the town of Litchfield. The current use tax today at 100% goes to the Conservation Commission account for the purchase of property to set aside for conservation purposes. That was decided by the citizens in 2003. The intention is, if this article were to pass, is that 50% of the current use taxes received would now go towards the income the town would receive and thus lower the tax rate. The warrant article really, as I said before, seeks the clarification of the voters if this is something that they want to do. Currently, in the past years, since 2003 to 2010, I've provided you with information on how much we've received on a year-to-year basis. As you can see, the amounts vary year to year and tie into pretty much what the economy's doing as well as what development's doing in town. We've had highs of upwards of $536,000, and we've had lows of $1,500. So it varies all over the place, and on a year-to-year basis, you will get extremes in there. In 2009, the Conservation Commission Fund, the audited results, indicated that we had about $882,000 that was in the funds for the purchase of land. Over the course of 2003 to 2010, we received about $1.6 million in total. As I said before, while this varies year to year, a use of these funds could potentially show a significant ability to help us in terms of our taxes if we were to receive large amounts in that particular year. The largest years that we would see could represent upwards of about 11% in terms of the town's total revenue for that year.
Questions in Article 6? You moved.
Thank you. I also believe, I think this is a good idea, and I spoke against it in 2003 based on knowing what those numbers were going to be. And the Conservation Commission doesn't have to ask you, the voters, where that money goes. Also, I believe, if the law hasn't been changed, but I believe you can hold the current use money to the following year and ask the voters on how to use it if it's a significant amount.
There are several ways, Mr. Bohm, that the law could be done. One way is to change the apportionment, which is what the Board of Selectmen proposed. The other way would be to do it on a year-to-year basis. That's correct.
Further questions? Come on up, talk. This is the Conservation Committee. You're speaking as a board member, right?
You got slides on here?
Okay. Here's a pointer.
Good afternoon, citizens of Litchfield. My name is Richard Husband. I live at 10 Mallard Court. I am a member of the Litchfield Conservation Commission, and there are a couple other members here today with me. Joan McKibben, who's the chairwoman, as well as Sharon Jones. Sharon Jones. And would basically like to give our side of the story. Not surprisingly, the Conservation Commission is against losing 50% of its funding that is made available to us to buy conservation lands, and that is what Article 6 will do. You have to understand that this money is only out there because its intended purpose, as provided by the legislature in RSA 79A, should be right on the screen here, is to encourage the preservation of open space, maintain the character of the state's landscape, conserve land, water, forests, agricultural, and wildlife resources. This is what this money is intended for. That's what it's always been out there for. That's what it's been used for by the town of Litchfield. In 2003, Litchfield made it clear that conservation is very important to the town when it did vote 100% of these funds should be used for conservation purposes. And our master plan itself in Litchfield encourages the preservation of open space. What Article 6 does is it diverts money from this intended purpose, a very important purpose to the town, for other programs that I'm not questioning, basically the general fund. I'm not questioning the importance of where the money is going into the general fund, but it's for something other than what it's intended for. And this is bad. It's bad fiscal policy. It's bad as a matter of course going forward. This is the same problem that we have on a national scale with the Social Security program. You don't rob Peter to pay Paul. What Article 6 is like the guy who suddenly discovers he has a rich uncle out there, and he doesn't know how he ever got along before without him. These funds haven't been used by the town. The town hasn't needed them for other purposes other than conservation. And we can't get used to using these for other purposes. Conservation is important. We needn't go through a priority analysis, but again, the town has made it clear that the quality and character of Litchfield is important to us. And if we take these funds that are available now to preserve that, and we start putting them into other programs, what's going to happen is just that the other programs are going to get used to this new source of income. The town and programs aren't any different than individuals. When you're getting money from other sources, your expectations go up, your standard of living goes up. You get used to using those funds, and that expectation is never going to go down. But the other programs, this is a temporary fix. The other programs eventually are going to need money from somewhere else anyway. But in the meantime, you've taken the money away from the Conservation Commission and from using it for conservation purposes. And now you've got left us high and dry. And so you basically are just going to create a dependency that is really bad as a matter of fiscal policy, particularly where this money is intended to go to. You have a problem in that if you take it away from the Conservation Commission and you take it away from the use that we use it for to buy lands to preserve open space, then what you're allowing is these same lands to be developed. And when these lands are developed, that increases the burden on the highways, the schools, the police and fire departments in our town. And what that is simply going to do is drive up taxes eventually anyway. So this is really a short-term fix that's going to lead to a long-term tax increase. It's not going to save you taxes. And what the short-term fix is really isn't all that great. Mr. Byron talked about there being the potential for this money to fund 11% of the town's budget in any particular year. Well, that's a number based on the really good years, 2005 and 2006, and the funds that were coming in then for current use taxes. In the last 10 years, the overall average that has come in for current use taxes has been about $160,000 a year, not the 500 and something thousand in those 2 good years. So you're talking about $80,000 to the town, being 50% of 160, which really is less than 2% of the town budget, this year at least. And what you're giving up in coming up with this 2% to spread across the general fund and the town budget is 50% of the funding of what we as the Conservation Commission have to do our job. What that means to an individual taxpayer is really only about, on a $200,000 home, $20 a year. That's $20 a year on a $200,000 home is what you're really kicking into the Conservation Fund. To take away 50% of our funding for a 2% bump for the rest of the budget is something, 50% of what it's not intended for is something that's not fair, and it's not prudent, because in the long run it's only going to increase your taxes anyway, and it's something that simply is not right. I mean, one thing that seems to always get lost when people look at cutting budgets and where they're going to get money is the future. And I don't know why the future always has to pay for the present, but I think those here who are my age, around 50 or older, know that the present does get here a lot quicker than you think. It's going to come, and it's going to come fast. And to just allow the town to start losing its lands and the quality of the open spaces that we have for a quick short-term fix is not a good idea. New Hampshire's population is growing rapidly. For the last 4 decades, it's been the fastest growing state in New England and the 9-state Northeast region. From 1960 to 2000, the population in New Hampshire doubled. It will soon triple. Projections vary on that, but it's just probably in the next 30 years, we're going to go up again, triple from where we were in 1960. This is all important, again, in terms of thinking about what we're going to do with our open space and trying to preserve the quality of the town. The open spaces are, in fact, disappearing. New Hampshire had the 5th highest percentage among all states of agricultural land converted to developed land in the 25-year period between 82 and 2007. So we're losing it rapidly here. Almost 20,000 acres a year of forest land are lost. And only 10% of key lands around public water supplies and aquifers are protected. Water is the new oil. I mean, I think everyone knows this just from the news and from your general knowledge of what's going on in the world. Water is more important than food to us. We don't think about it because it's always there when you turn on the tap. But it is something that we absolutely need as an essential element of our lives. And it's something that, in part, the Conservation Commission is trying to protect. Part of what we're doing is trying to preserve the open space. Part of what we're trying to do is to get lands that are going to be around these key areas of our water supplies and our aquifers. As I just mentioned, only 10% of them are being protected. Groundwater provides the vast majority of our drinking water. It's the rate at which groundwater is diminishing has more than doubled in the last 50 years. And as noted at the bottom of the slide, 10 years ago, a joint report by both the Department of Environmental Services, New Hampshire, and the Public Utilities Commission of New Hampshire to the legislature noted that water is, in fact, an increasing concern, particularly in southern New Hampshire. Forest. That's another thing we're trying to protect. Forests are important for not only the obvious recreation and wildlife they are preserving, but also forests give us water. 53% of the water supply of the lower 48 states originates in our forest. Wetlands. A lot of people knock wetlands because they deem them nothing more than swamps. Well, that's not true. It's the same as most things that are integrally tied into our environment. They have a purpose, and it's all in the web of life. And wetlands do things beyond breed mosquitoes. They're part of our watershed systems. They actually work to purify our drinking water. They actually work to replenish our groundwater. And they do act as a buffer, sort of, or a sponge to actually diminish the effects of flooding. And they do support wildlife other than mosquitoes. There are a lot of important and endangered or at-risk species that are in our wetlands. The Conservation Commission has done its best over the years to try and be good stewards. We try and take the money that's coming in here and to put it to good uses and to buy lands that are going to continue to protect our waters and preserve the quality of Litchfield residents. And I've noted here some of our more recent purchases. One that everyone may be familiar with is the Moores Falls land out there, which is it's a nice recreation area for hiking. And I think probably a lot of people have been out there. This next slide shows the trolley track. One of the things we do, members will try and police the properties that we purchase and keep them up to snuff, or actually improve them so that people can use them for recreation. You can see what the trolley track looked for in this particular piece of land before the Conservation Commission got involved and what it looked like afterwards. A lot of work went into that. Please don't tie the Conservation Commission's hands. Yes, we have a good deal of money in the fund right now, but that's because we've been careful stewards. We don't run out and spend every dime the minute it comes in. We've been looking around, particularly in these economic times, to try and get the best bargains that we can on land. If you really diminish our funds, as the article currently drafted would do, eventually our funds are going to dry up. And if we don't have the money to go out and purchase land as it comes in, and we have to go before the town at town meetings and ask for it, we're not going to have sellers out there who are willing to wait that long, and we're going to lose good deals. Another important aspect of having the funds available is that you can get matching funds a lot of times. If you do have funds at the town level, you can get them from the state or possibly the federal level. Article 6, in a split of 50-50, taking back 50% of our money is a bad change. As I noted, we're only talking about $20 a year to individuals with the average $200,000 home to keep the status quo and to keep, as much as possible, Litchfield the way it is. If you take away our money and more land goes in development, you're going to increase taxes, as I talked about. We're going to lose our natural resources. We're going to lose recreation, hunting, hiking. We're going to lose the town's character and quality of life. Why do people live in Litchfield? I don't know anyone who isn't here or doesn't see the most important aspect of the town as being its rural nature, its forest, its fields, its open space. Everyone knows they've been around and they've seen other New Hampshire towns that have gone the opposite. And you know there was a point in time when the town started making decisions that brought it down that road. And I think we're at one of those important points in our history right now, in Litchfield's history, in terms of whether we're going to continue, or at least try to continue to be Litchfield as we know it, or whether we're going to slide into one of those other towns that we don't want to be. Everyone knows the story or the fable of the ant and the grasshopper. At least you learn it when you're young. The stupid grasshopper lives in the moment. They're only concerned about the present. They're not worried about the future. But the smart ant saves for the future, even when it seems like it's a long ways away and there's no current need. Because the winter will come, and the winter will come here for all of us. We all know that resources globally, as well as at this level, are diminishing. There's increased pressure all the time. And we've got to continue to do our best, at least, to try and save for the future by saving our land and our resources for the future. Again, you're talking, again, on an average, $20 to a taxpayer. I'm sure pretty much everyone in this room will go out and dish out at least that much money every year to the Salvation Army, the Girl Scouts, the Lions Club, the American Cancer Society, whatever. These are all great causes, and I do myself. But preserving this town, preserving the quality of life for your children and your fellow residents, that's an important cause too. I appreciate the difficulties the Board of Selectmen have in these economic times in trying to come up with solutions. And I think most of the time they get it very, very right. But I don't think this proposed change is one of those times. It's wrong. Notwithstanding everything I just said, the Conservation Commission is willing to support a change that would provide a 80-20% split, meaning that the Conservation Commission would get 80% of the funds and 20% would go to the general fund. We understand and we're trying to help, but we also have a job too.
Are you making that motion?
If I'm allowed to, sure, I would move then for that change to Article 6.
You need to make the motion, write it down, and we need to vote on it and discuss it.
Is that an amendment or not?
We're here to discuss the amendment of the
Okay.
article. If you're wishing to amend it,
Mhm.
then let's write it down. Write down what you're proposing to change on the article as written.
Right now. Okay.
Yes. That's what we're here to do.
I didn't notice anyone else doing that, but okay.
We've been doing it all afternoon, ma'am, sir.
Because if it isn't, I do have an amendment.
Yeah, okay, well,
I'm sorry.
Before they make an amendment that might cause me not to be able to speak, I have something to say.
I was at the mic first.
you have, but you weren't in line to say it. This gentleman was up first, he was up second, and you were up third.
So noted.
You want me to finish this first? Okay.
Well, I mean, just give me the breakdown, so is it 80-20 you're saying?
Yes.
80-20.
Okay.
Write it down, give it to
Well,
the
I'm trying
clerk,
to
and we'll talk.
understand how this reads.
So do we have a second on this proposed amendment? We have a second, so we're now able to discuss it. Yep, simple, just give it over. Now, if you, yes, sir. No, we have to discuss the article as proposed, as the proposed amendment. So we have a proposed amendment to change the percentage breakdown to say, to see if the town will vote to deposit 20%
That would be correct, yes.
of the revenues collected, yada, yada, yada.
Correct.
And we have a seconded. Would you like to discuss it further?
No, I think I've covered it.
Do we have any questions on the proposed amendment? To see if the town will vote to deposit 50% of the revenues collected pursuant to the town, in the conservation land. Okay. 80. To see if the town will vote to deposit 80% of the revenues collected pursuant to yada yada, and then to deposit 20% of the revenues in the town's general fund. Thank you, ma'am. Discussion of the proposed amendment. Questions? No? We have a question on the proposed amendment. Yes, sir.
Keith Buxton, 17 Winter Circle. I'm not sure if I should be speaking to this amendment or
Yes.
or after this.
We are discussing the proposed amendment.
My thought was that with this, with the current use money that comes in with that RSA, I think it was 79 you had on the slide, it said that that money was to be used for open space and recreation. I had the suggestion that we maybe do 80-20, but the 20% go to the Recreation Commission for
That would be another
Okay.
amendment. Okay. So further discussion of the proposed amendment to change the breakdown from 50% to 80% to the Conservation Committee and 20% to the town general fund. No further discussion, so we need to take a vote to see whether we want to change the article to read as noted. Those in favor of the proposed amendment to change the percentage from 50% to 80%, 80-20, please say aye. Those opposed say no. We need a standing vote. Can I have all those who support the article, please stand up, please? Those in support of adjusting the amendment to read 80%, 20%, as noted, 20% going to the town general fund. Those in support of that, please stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
And me.
24, 25, 26, 27, 28. 28. Those opposed, please stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You're standing? 14? No, you're not. 13, right? 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Sir, at the back corner, are you standing up or are you leaning against the wall? Yeah. Were you standing up before too? So I counted it before. So I'm going to start. So let's see the previous number. 28 was the original one. We have a question on the 20 on the gentleman up top there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I started him.
You just voted, you just can't.
20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay. So we have a 27 to 26 vote. Shall I count again? I can't understand why he wouldn't sit down. Yeah. I'm going to count again if you don't mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. It's 25 now. We've already reduced by 1. Can I get those in favor of the change to stand up, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. I don't have to vote until a tie. So it's 27 for, 25 against. So the amendment carries. We now have an amended Article 6 with the percentages reading to see if the town will vote to deposit 80% of the revenues collected, and then further on after the RSA section, and to deposit 20% of the revenues in the town's general fund. Okay. Further discussion on the amended Article 6.
Can I make an amendment now?
You can make an amendment now.
I have an amendment.
Speak it.
Mr. Moderator, I have an amendment to that to see if the town will vote to deposit 99% of the revenue collected pursuant to RSA 79-A, the land use change tax assessment properties removed from current use in the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund, previously established in accordance with RSA 36-A-5, blah, 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 and deposit 1% of the revenues in the town's general fund.
Do we have a second? You may discuss it.
When the town put this in place, it was one of the most forward-looking things they did. We weren't putting anything into the Conservation Land Acquisition Fund. We had people coming here while the town was being built very rapidly saying, we don't want to necessarily sell our land over or give this up for development, but we have to do something. Do you have any money? Well, most of the time the Conservation Commission didn't. We passed on a lot of very good purchases that could have been used, not just as conservation land, because conservation is an overarching thing. It's what we build playgrounds on. It's where we go hiking. It's land along brooks, waterways that we preserve for public use and access. It's not always the mosquito-laden swamp that they showed up there, which is good for, cleansing our water, the things that we need to live. It's the things we use for recreation, and not recreation necessarily for ball fields, although some of that is on conservation land. It's just a mechanism. The current land use change tax, what this will do to revenue right now is nothing. Nobody's taking the land and converting it over right now. We don't see developments going up. So the reality is it's not going to add any money to the general fund. I think when we need the money the most is going to be the next boom, when things start to move again, when we do start seeing some of our farmland coming up for sale. Before it's developed, we have the money set aside to take care of that. I represented this town on the Conservation Commission, on the Planning Board, and I have to tell you, when you tie their hands, you've tied them. It's almost impossible to recover because you have somebody that's got pressure here to take that income. They come to the town, to the Conservation Commission. They say, we'd like to do something with you. We're short the money. We have to wait a year. We have to go to the next town meeting and then bring a proposal into you and say, hey, we want to spend $1 million on this piece of land. Will you support us? I have to tell you what's going to happen. That land's going to go to the developer. So as we see the I-93 widening project, Town of Litchfield's been very active, their planning board, in that process to make sure we have not only the land ordinances in place that we need to make sure that we don't get overbuilt, but also things like this, the Conservation Commission Land Acquisition Fund to help fund it. I can only tell you one thing, the most moving thing I've ever heard. I was at a meeting, and a guy from Londonderry by the name of Mike Speltz, he works for the New Hampshire Forest Society, said, just think of it this way. 10 minutes to 10 acres. Everybody that lives in the United States should have 10 minutes to 10 acres where they can go take a walk in a park, in the woods, have some place to decompress. That's what this money goes for. I think it's ludicrous to throw it in the general fund. Thank you.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 6, changing the percentages from 80-20 to 99-1.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
I would like to say that as infrequent as it is, Ray Peoples and I tend to agree. Here's my $10. You can have it. It's not about the money, okay? It's about the stewardship of the money. For me, the reason I'm standing down here is we need to make sure that the value of this $10 gets $10 worth of land. And when the price of land is down like it is now, we should be looking for opportunities to make sure that we get the best value for it. The value of this dollar for land purchases goes down every single year. Giving you more in years to come isn't going to get us as much value for our dollar as looking for opportunities now. When you guys came to the Board of Selectmen and said we have some land we want to buy, we supported you in buying it because the prices were available. But I'd like to make sure before we sit there and say you can keep having more that you're going to do the best with what you have and look for opportunities today because that's in the town's best interest. Stop planning for the future. Look at what we have and what we might convert to rather than say, I need to protect how much money we're going to collect in the future. Look at maximizing the value of our resources over the long term before they go and try to sell it to a developer. Thank you.
May I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
That's the first time I've really, heard somebody chastised for not spending money. I mean, so basically your concern is that we don't run out and spend every dime the minute we get it? I can assure you that we are looking around all the time for good deals. Okay, but we're not going to spend it just because it is there. We will make the best use of the money we have in the past. We have a commission that meets every month. We talk about what's out there. And we do try and get the best value we can out of our dollar. That's why every penny of it isn't spent. Sure, we could drain the fund tomorrow, but that is not the best use of the money.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 6.
Yes.
Mr. Perry.
Steve Perry, 5 Lidston. You have close to $900,000 available to you now, correct? Is there anything, any plan set forward as to where to use that money?
Well, again,
Nothing to date, correct?
you mean, do we have purchase and sale agreements? Do we have purchase and sale agreements? We are, as I just explained.
Are you developing a plan to spend the money at this current time?
We have a continuing plan, which is to buy land that makes sense in terms of what we're trying to accomplish in preserving Litchfield. Do we have pieces of land laid out? No, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. If you let people who have the land know that you're after it, what do you think is going to happen to the price?
Well, I disagree because as Mr. Lambert said, it was actually a great point. Land values are about as low as they're going to get at this time. So the best thing to do is pursue the possible revenues, the possible avenues that you would want to go after. Right now would be the time to do it. So as a person sitting up there with the selectmen, my view on reducing this down to 50% was just for the fact that we have no plan going forward. We have an account that continues to build money that's basically at your disposal to use any way you see fit. After you vote on it, it comes to the selectmen. There's only 7 people in this town that have the right to decide where this money goes. I want everybody to know that.
I think if the Board of Selectmen had this problem with all of the funding that they're dealing with and they had an excess sitting in an account, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. We do have a plan, but again, it makes no sense, as a matter of common sense, to put out a published plan of the lands we are looking at, because it's only going to drive the price up.
Mr. Lynch had a question.
I have a question in the use of the money in relation to what we're trying to do. Ray had mentioned something, it's not just buying land and letting the trees grow and everything, we just walk it. Can it be used for recreation? What type of recreation this money can be used for? That's the question that I have. We're collecting the money, it goes towards the conservation fund to purchase or to have recreation, okay? We have a rec commission that's looking to do stuff on town land, or can we look at it as that point? That money can be used for in that. It's just a question of where it can be applied.
I think I'd have to defer to town council, I think, but I don't think you can use the money legally under the RSAs to just for recreational purposes. I think it has to be to purchase land.
Yes.
For recreational purposes?
That's
In conservation, open
Council
space?
want to comment on that? Or Mr. Byron? He's looking it up.
Okay.
Can we defer
Thank
the
you.
question? We'll defer the question. Answer later on. Mr. Byron, you had a comment, or Mr. Peoples?
Again, I have to go back to just, and spending a lot of time on the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, and the Board of Selectmen, first, they can only expend the money. Mr. Bowman brought that up. They have to decide they're going to spend it as a commission. Once they do that, they have to have a plan in place and a purchase and sales, and take that to a public hearing. So at that time, just like this public venue, the public gets to come in, comment on the purchase, and they make the decision what they're going to do. They go to the Board of Selectmen with that. The Selectmen have to sign off on it too, as they should. The town father should have a nod. To the best of my knowledge, the way the RSA was originally crafted, and I'm sure Mr. Lefevre will back that up, is that it can only be used for the purchase of land. It's a land acquisition fund. What the land is will definitely determine what its use is. So the Conservation Commission has partnered with other people in the town to purchase pieces to be used for other things. I could tell you an example of that was the library came to us. They needed the money. They wanted to buy the land next to it to make sure it was preserved so that in the future, if they ever needed to expand, they had some land to do it on. The Conservation Commission also bought the part in the back so they could conserve it for other conservation purposes. So it's serving many facets for the town. Where the library got what they needed, they didn't have a dime. The mustard fields, that was going to development. Carl Frank, one of the town's founding members, I mean, he's been here for his whole life, came to the Conservation Commission and said, I don't want to see this developed. We had the money, we were able to construct a deal and move forward with that. I can't see this one. I'm disappointed in the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Byron was going to respond, I think.
Yes, again, Frank Byron, Board of Selectmen. I am a past chairman of the Conservation Commission, past chairman of the Planning Board, voted 2000 Citizen Planner of the Year, and also made the case and was successful in getting the Grassy Pond area preserved by the state of New Hampshire. So I have a undying respect for trying to set aside land. This is being done not to try and take money away from the Conservation Commission. This is being done because it's time for the town to take a look at what it wants to do with the money that it receives. There's misstatements being made about this will only have an impact of small peanuts to the town. I stated before that it'll have an impact of about 10% in the revenue, not the total budget, the revenue stream of the town of Litchfield. There's a difference, the revenue stream of the town of Litchfield in the bigger years. Right now, the money's low. The money's low because the building is not going on the way it normally goes on in towns of Litchfield. But when this comes through, this is money that can help the town come out of the recession by taking and dropping your tax rates. It doesn't go into the general fund and just sit there unused. It will go as revenue to the town and immediately hit what you get charged for taxes.
Sir. Chris Pascucci, 12 Colonial Drive. I think Mr. Byron just said it best, actually, about the revenue stream. We're talking about a couple different things here. One is about how is the money best used that's in the Conservation Commission, and I don't think that has anything to do right now with the Warren article. The Conservation Commission, I think, does a fantastic job. There's a lot of money in there now. It serves a valuable purpose. And I don't think if we are voting to change how much money we fund annually, whether it's less, 1% less, 20% less, or 50% less, that we care any less about open spaces. You made very valid points about freshwater, forests, which are all true, and nobody wants to see that go away. If there was no money, or maybe $50,000 in that fund right now, I think the outcome of the vote or even the warrant itself might not even exist. I think all has to be taken into consideration that there is $800,000, $900,000 in there now, and all we're doing with this warrant article is changing how much money we're choosing to put in there in the coming years, which, please correct me if I'm wrong, that could be changed again, or next year by way of percentages, or a warrant could be put on there saying, do we agree to fund $50,000 or $100,000 one time this year to purchase some lands? We have some things in mind. I don't see right now a $900,000 opportunity being missed within this coming year. So I guess I don't see the $800,000 or $900,000 being spent totally this year. If I saw maybe $100,000 in there right now, I might think differently, saying we might miss an opportunity. This money doesn't look like it's being spent very quickly, and if there's nothing on the table right now to see that it is going to be spent this year, maybe a little bit relief to the taxpayers might be a good thing to help offset what we're currently spending in other avenues. So I don't see this as robbing Peter to pay Paul in the long run, because it could be changed at any time, and I think the people in this town, the same way, and was it 2003 when we did vote to fund this 100%, if that was the case? I don't ever foresee this fund drying up. I think everybody in this town would want to see public spacing and land being conserved for future use.
Response? Sure.
Well, you can say that a statement or a decision as to what percentage goes into the conservation fund isn't representative of how the town feels about conservation in general. But that's like saying if we cut the school budget by 50%, we're not really saying we don't like school, we're just cutting the budget by 50%. Cutting the funding by 50% is itself a statement. And it's a lasting statement because it reduces what the town has for the ability to preserve land. Secondly, this isn't a one-year warrant article before us. You're talking about a permanent change. I guess theoretically we can come in here every year and vote on changes to this and that. But what seems to be sticking in people's craws is simply the fact that there's $800,000 sitting in the rich uncle's pocket right now. And people want to go after it. Well, once it's gone, it's gone. Okay? And if you take away our funding going forward, or a sizable portion of it, we're not going to have the ability to purchase land in the way that we need to be able to do it, as Ray already talked about. If we have to go to town meetings to get a good deal, we're not going to get the good deal that some of the other selectmen have expressed is so important to their concerns as well. They want to see us get good deals, we want to get good deals, but we have to have the funds available, and they will dry up.
We have an answer to the legal question that was asked by Mr. Lynch.
David Lefebvre, Town Council. The question was the use of the money. Yeah. And under RSA 36A4, the statutory language is the money can be used to acquire, maintain, improve, protect, or limit the future use of or otherwise conserve and properly utilize open spaces and other land and water areas. So that would be the authority of the commission to use that money.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am.
Ann Moody, Garden Drive in Litchfield, New Hampshire. I have a question. With 50% of that money going into the grant, what is that money going to be used for?
Right now, it's not 50%. It's 80. It's 80-20.
80-20. Well,
Okay. Okay.
if it's not changed, it'll be 50%.
No, it is changed. It's now changed 80-20.
So it's changed 80-20.
We have a proposal to change it further to 99-1.
Okay.
So just wanted to straighten that out. So you can ask the question.
Well,
Yeah.
still, what
Go ahead.
this particular funds would be used for to lower my taxes?
Mr. Byron?
Each year, the town puts together a budget, and what ends up happening is the town's budget is offset. In other words, if we budget, in this case, I'll use rough numbers, $4.3 million. If we show that we're going to receive $2 million of revenue, that means I've got to tax you to pay for the town's services of $1.3 million, or $2.3 million, my apologies. So what ends up happening is that directly goes in to decrease the amount of money that we have to charge in taxes when the budget goes forward each year.
And it's like when you're looking at it, it's always something new added to the taxpayers. And, you know, when you look at it, we'll be paying for the extra uses on the water, and there's always something new comes in. And each year, instead of our taxes going down, they just keep going up and up. I think what we need to do here in Litchfield for the school, the budget, or everybody in town who lives here loses 10% of the pay, or they don't have money for this or that. I think everybody in the committee, the budget, let's stop the spending here and start saving, like the conservation. I mean, you take an example from them. They have the money, and now we want to take it and put it somewhere, spend it more. We need to cut down in Litchfield the
Okay,
spending.
just to put this into appropriate perspective for you, the money that's going to the Conservation Commission is coming out of your pocket, you are paying for.
Mr. Perry?
With just one last comment, my point of the whole matter is I'd rather see this board, being the Conservation Committee, I'd rather see them be proactive than reactive. A lot of times, that gets lost in sight.
Do we have further questions on the proposed amendment to Article 6 to change the percentages from 80-20 to 99-1? No further questions, so let's take a vote. Those in favor of adjusting Article 6 from 80-20 to 99-1, as described in the article, please stand up. If you're in favor of the change to 99-1, please stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21-4. Those against, please stand up. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, amendment is defeated. So, defeated. We remain at 80-20. Further discussion on Article 6 as amended. 80-20. Sir. Say again?
I don't have a pen. Steve Harris, Bear Run. Bear raise for me? Yeah. When I looked at this, it actually looked like a positive, but when you actually read it, it's a negative, right? So right now they get 100% and we're reducing it. We state that later in the article, so I'd probably like to redo it. So this says that we're reducing the money that they collect with 80% going, is it 80-20? What are we doing now?
Right now, it's 80-20. It's 80% goes to the Conservation Committee and 20% goes to the town's general fund.
For some reason, I lost the page. What is it? 8?
It's Article 6, don't have the page number.
It's tough to get old, isn't
You're
it?
falling apart, I know.
I know.
I have the same problem.
To see if the town will vote to deposit 80% of the revenues collected pursuant to whatever it is, RSA
Yep.
79A, right?
Yep, yep.
Use,
It's 80% up top.
right, and then 20%.
And to deposit 20%.
So I'd like to change that, so to reduce the, so what I'd like to see the words to change, to see if the town will reduce the percentage from 100% to the Conservation Committee to 80% to the town, 80% to the Conservation Committee and 20% to the town.
That's what it says today.
No,
That's
it doesn't say reduce in the front. So if you read this article, the way it is right now, to see if the town will vote to deposit 50% of the land.
Well,
revenue, so now it's
where
gonna be
today the
80%.
law says 100%, it's changing the law.
Right, down at the bottom. I'd like to relocate that, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't see the effect of it. It's the same thing.
Well, I guess the effect is that the only way you see,
Good point. Hey, excellent point. Do we have a second on that motion to change the article?
Thank you.
Okay, I want to fall back a second. This gentleman has a motion to change the article. Do we have a second to change the article? Thank you. That's what I asked. So, now we can discuss it. Go ahead. That's what I'm trying to...
That's what I'm trying to get
He's trying
at.
to address the wording of the article, but I think it gets to the same effect.
It gets the same effect, but the problem is
Well,
you have to read the entire article to see that it's actually a reduction. This looks like a positive when you first started. When I start reading this
Okay.
article, it looks like it's a positive, right?
Okay.
Looks like we're gonna give 50% to the Conservation Committee. Hey, that sounds all good, well and good. It only until you get to the bottom that you actually see that we're reducing what they take
Okay,
from
so
100% to 50%.
then you need to reword this
Correct.
appropriately. Take the time to do it, and we'll wait for you.
Sorry about that.
Point of information.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe in the past, we have published on our ballots warrant articles with a small explanation at the bottom of the article. Would it not simplify this if the way the article reads currently, 80-20, that we put a small explanation that currently Conservation Commission gets 100%? And that would solve
So
this problem.
So are you proposing, it sounds like you're not,
a
okay.
suggestion.
Okay. And that wouldn't be an amendment change, that would be just an explanation of the amendment on the ballot, right? If you did that? So Mr. Reed was just proposing, and we'll discuss this, is there an opportunity to provide an explanative statement on the ballot to describe the article without changing the amendment, without changing the article?
As a matter of fact, the way the article is currently written, it does do just that. The last sentence of the article is, this modifies an approval of a deposit of 100%.
I'm gonna receive a motion to table this discussion so that we can get proper time to word this article as proposed. And we'll come back to it. So I'm gonna table, we'll propose this. Will you make a motion to propose it, please, to table this?
I make a motion to table this?
Do we have a second to table this? Okay.
Thank you.
Those in favor of tabling the discussion until further notice, until we can reword this properly, please say aye. Those opposed say no? Okay, thank you. So we'll table this article as the gentleman will reword it appropriately, and then we'll come back to it. So this has been tabled. Don't let me forget, we gotta come back to Article 6. Let's go to Article 7. This is the Vacation Liability Trust Fund article. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to create an expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 31:19A to be known as the Vacation Accrual Expendable Trust Fund, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to serve as agents to expend from the funds, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $58,862 for transfer into this fund from the unexpended fund balance as of December 31, 2010. This amount is shown on the town's balance sheet as a liability. The intent of this article is to annually account for the cost of earned but unused vacation time so that the expenses associated with the employee resignation and retirements do not impact the current year budget. This would have a net cost to 2011 general taxation of $0. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, and it's recommended by the Budget Committee 5-2. Mr. Lambert? That's what I had you on there, reading. No? Mr. Hoke, okay. Mr. Hoke.
I get all the fun accounting articles. This is another accounting article change. This takes money that is already in the town's general fund and sets it aside for the covering expenses of personnel leaving the employ of the town. This fund changes its values over time to reflect the liability that the town accrues over time. And by that, I mean the amount of days people may have in the bank may go up, may go down, rates of pay may go up and down. Our costs associated with employees may go up and down. By that, I mean our share of taxes, our share of New Hampshire retirement. Our overall cost for this, and is that $58,000 you see in the article, is based on numbers identified in the audit. The auditors have identified this and put part of our general fund into a really restricted liability area. This would allow us to set that money aside, and operationally, the benefit to us is the payment of any time when we do it now. If an employee leaves for whatever reason, while the audit adjustment gets made at the end of the year to that balance, in the current year, we had taken out of existing operating costs. So we have to adjust our spending in other places to account for whatever unexpected cost we have for an employee leaving. This fund would allow us to use money that we've set aside, so we're not mid-year juggling our budget to try to accommodate a cost like this. The other way that this would work is we would make an annual adjustment to what that liability is for the town. Some years it'll go up, some years it'll go down, and we'll adjust the balance in the account accordingly each year.
Do we have discussion or questions on Article 7?
Pat Spencer, 9 Cranberry Lane. Is this like a reserve fund?
It functions like a reserve fund, yes. It takes something that our auditors have identified as a potential restriction on our full use of money, and it actually now moves it in, calls it a reserve fund, and gets handled that way.
Now, this is for all town employees?
Yes.
Certain?
All.
Okay. Why wouldn't you call it a reserve fund? Why wouldn't it be just separate as a reserve?
It would be we're setting it up as an expendable trust fund. That's the language we chose to use for it. It functions very similarly to a reserve fund. You're right.
Okay, are there going to be appropriations every year, or is it just going to be part of the budget?
It will be part of a year-end adjustment to that balance that the selectmen make. 'Cause the way this is written, the selectmen are the agents of the fund. So they would be able to transfer money into that fund to cover, or out of that fund into the operating budget to cover a cost in a current year. And then at the end of the year, if there is a balance adjustment based on the overall liability, they would move money into that fund.
So it'd be an appropriation every year?
It would be a year-end accounting appropriation. It wouldn't be a line item in the budget.
Okay.
Further questions, discussion on Article 7?
Susan Seabrook, 18 Bear Run Drive. I was just wondering, does the appropriation on an annual basis come from the salary, for example, for the police officers, and where does it come from?
The adjustment amount each year?
Not the amount, the fund.
The fund,
Does
okay.
it come from the salaries of the workers in the town, or does it come from a separate town fund?
Right now, this 58,000 that's in the...
I understand this. I'm
You got
thinking
that,
about
okay.
in the future years.
In future years, it would come from the overall, any adjustment in or out hits the bottom line. So if somebody leaves during the year and we have to pay out $4,000 or $2,000 or $1,000, whatever the number is based on that person had, 5 vacation days or whatever our buyout is, we would transfer money out of this trust fund back into the general fund to cover that cost, because it is that is a purpose of that trust fund. At the end of the year, part of the accounting exercise that we do and should do is what's our overall exposure at the end of the year. Collectively across all town employees, how much vacation time is banked, how much has retirement gone up, how much has it gone down, how much does that number get adjusted. So, in practical terms, that number may go up or down each year by a fairly small amount. The first year is the worst, is the biggest year if you haven't funded it. Because if you think about it, in any given year, you're going to have some people that are going to bank some vacation days, some people are going to use some vacation days, some wages are going to go up, some employees will leave. You run all of those things, which we do now for the audit, And then there would be a transfer number that would come at the end of the year that would really come as part of our audit process, where they would say, you need to transfer this amount in or transfer this amount out to cover your exposure.
So there would be caps on how much they could accrue? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this doesn't change vacation policy. This does not change any of our benefit policy or any of our vacation policy or any of that. All of this does is this is really just an accounting mechanism to help us deal with the vacation costs and the liability costs we already have on the books.
But it's unused
It's unused.
benefits that are put in this fund only?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Lambert, any comment?
This fixes an accounting problem. If you have people who are accruing vacation days this year, and you're going to have to pay them next year or the year after, and that money hasn't been moved over to that budget, you have to pay it out of that budget anyway, and you don't have the money to pay for something else. And because we have a bottom line accounting procedure, it's called a gross appropriation. If somebody leaves this year and takes all of the vacation, so they show up in December, you're at the end of the year, okay, we have a week's worth of time left in the annual budget, and they go, yeah, I'm leaving, you owe me all of my vacation time. We've spent all of the money that we've already allocated, but we still owe them this from the previous years. We have to go and fix all kinds of accounting problems. This goes out and says, they earned it, we're going to put it in a piggy bank, we're going to adjust the piggy bank for what we owe people, and it cleans up the accounting and makes everyone's job simple. There's no magic, there's nobody hiding money, there's nobody increasing benefits, it just fixes accounting. Does that make sense?
Further discussion on Article 7? Hearing none, it'll be on the ballot as written. Are we ready to rediscuss Article 6? No, not yet. Let's go to Article 8. So this is a petition article to see if the town will vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 154:1, Section 1A, that allows the governing body to appoint the fire chief with firefighters appointed by the fire chief. This would allow for greater accountability by allowing the establishment of minimum requirements for the position, as well as continuity in town government by bringing this position in line with the others. Mr. Lemire was going to speak to this article. And then I believe Mr. Byron has some presentation material.
Brent Lemire, 547 Charles Bancroft Highway. I speak in favor of this. For several years, there have been many of us town residents that have maintained that our method of choosing a fire chief may not be in our best interest. The manner of electing a person to a technical position such as this has the potential of creating an operational and managerial vacuum for the department if that person is not qualified. So far, we've been lucky that those who have run and held the position have had fire service backgrounds. We can't keep taking that chance with a $500,000 operation. The intent of this petition is to foster good government by ensuring accountability. Last year, we changed our form of government, authorizing the Board of Selectmen to hire a town administrator to manage the affairs of the town. The board was able to hire an extremely qualified individual after an extensive process of application, qualification, verification, and interview. This is the same process that needs to occur when we hire a public safety official. The change would not take effect until the expiration of the term of the incumbent or when and if a vacancy occurs, nor would it add any cost to the town, nor result in a change of position, change in the status of the position. The person interested in the position would simply apply to the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator rather than placing a name on the ballot with the Town Clerk's office. The Board of Directors of a corporation doesn't hire a CEO to manage just part of the company. They hire them to manage all of it. And this change will help our Town Administrator and Board of Selectmen to effectively manage all of the town agencies, ensuring operational and fiscal accountability.
Mr. Byron, you want to do your...
Yeah, just to give people an explanation of what the impact of this warrant article would do if approved. The town in roughly the late 1940s established our volunteer fire department. And under state law, RSA 151:1, there are various types of organizational systems that could be used in terms of the fire department. One of which is an elected chief, which is what we have now. The second is a chief that would be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. That determination is made by you, the voters. If approved, this warrant article would cause the chief's position to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. The existing chief would serve until March of 2012, when the Board of Selectmen would at that point assume responsibilities for appointing the chief. The chief would continue appointing officers going forward, both after this became effective, and the chief would continue to hire and recruit firefighters. By RSA, the chief would continue to have control over all equipment, personnel, and all firefighting methodologies. And that's currently the way it is today, so there'd be no change in that. The Board of Selectmen has taken no position on this petition warrant article.
Mr. Garrett.
Thank you. I understand you guys haven't taken an official position, but I am interested on you individually as to your positions on it. Because obviously you all will be involved in the appointment. And so I'd like to know if you're personally in favor of this or not. But to the point, we heard Mr. Lemire say that, speak to qualifications, but quite honestly, my concerns are more along the line of an appointment. Not to say that any person on this board or anybody involved in this process currently could ever have anything but the best interests at heart. The problem with appointment and government positions is always you never quite know what you're going to get based upon 5 people's, I mean, anything could happen. You can't guarantee that you're going to get the right person because that's how politics works. I'd much rather have accountability. They talk about accountability there. There's no greater accountability than to the folks of this town. And if people aren't comfortable in believing that their fire chief can protect them and is qualified, they can certainly not vote him in. He can present his qualifications, he can present who he is, and if folks don't think and feel safe with who they're going to put in that position, then I would suggest not voting for him. That's the ultimate accountability.
Response? No? Further questions on Article 8? None? We'll find it on the ballot as written. They chose not to respond. Article 6 ready yet? What? Did you want to respond to that? I asked Mr. Byron if there was a response, and there wasn't. They can't hear you. All right, before we go into Article 6, George, Mr. Lambert would like to respond to Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Garrett pointed out that there's no greater accountability in government than at the ballot box electing your officials. I'd almost agree with that. The problem is that when we're electing the officials for this, there's no place on that warrant article where they attach a resume. And so the accountability is really key. I'm in favor, in general, I've been outspoken on this for a couple of years, on the general idea that we should be appointing, not electing, people like the road agent, people like the fire chief, not because of who they are or anything, but because if we need to deal with it in the meantime, we, as the Board of Selectmen, have the ability and accountability to extend the looking glass beyond the town of Litchfield. Because electing our fire chief, or electing our road agent, or electing any of these other services means that we are restricted to the talent pool within our borders. And that problem is if I have to replace them, I have to find somebody who's as good as what we have now. And if I can't do that, we're all stuck. So that's why I've been up here a couple times trying to comment on that problem. I hope that helps answer your accountability question. Thank you.
Okay, we're reviewing the motion. You're going to restate the motion as you'd like to state it. And we'll proceed with the discussion of that. So why don't you go ahead and make your motion at this point?
Okay.
This is back to Article 6. So Article 6 reads, as written, 80-20%, and we have a motion on the table to reword this article.
Correct.
Go ahead, read your proposed new wording, and then we'll second that again, if you would. Is that all right?
Sounds. To see if the town will vote to modify the 2003 approval to deposit 100% of the revenues collected pursuant to RSA 79-A in the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund previously established in accordance with RSA 36-A:5(3). The purpose of the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund is to purchase land conservation or trail easements or the purchase of the development rights. The town will reduce the 100% amount going to the Conservation and Land I can't read my own writing. Conservation Land Acquisition to 80%. The remaining 20% will be deposited in the town's general fund.
Do we have a second to that formal motion? Seconded. It's seconded. Discussion on the motion.
The only thing I'd like to say is I just want to make sure people realize that in 2003 they voted to do this 100%, and now we're changing that 100% allocation to an 80-20 percentage. When I read the original bill, that I know it's in there, but it's way down on the bottom. It's kind of buried in there. And when you first look at this, it looks like it's a positive. It looks like we're actually establishing this fund and putting 50% of revenues that could or may not be collected into it. So,
Further discussion, and I'll reread it again before we finish off. So can I have the copy? Sure. I hope I can read it now that... So we have a motion on the table. We have no further discussion, right? So we have a motion on the table to change the wording of Article 6 to read, to see if the town will vote to modify the 2003 approval to deposit 100% of the revenues collected pursuant to RSA 79-A in the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund previously established in accordance with RSA 36A:511. The purpose of the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund is to purchase land, conservation or trail easements, or the purchase of development rights. The town will reduce the 100% amount going to conservation and land acquisition to 80%. The remaining 20% will be deposited in the town's general fund. Those in favor of adjusting Article 6 as written, as noted, as proposed, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. All right. So Article 6 is completed. Mr. Byron, did you want to? No? Okay. Ready?
I'm just waiting for you for Article.
Yep, so we're now at Article 9. This is also a petition article. To see if the town will vote to authorize the appointment of a town treasurer by the Board of Selectmen rather than by election. This option is authorized under RSA 41:26E per RSA 669:17D. When a town votes to discontinue the elected treasurer office, the person holding the elected office of treasurer at the time of the vote is to discontinue it shall hold office until the annual town election first following the discontinuance of the office, at which time the elected office of treasurer shall terminate, irrespective of the length of that office's term. This is a petition. Does anyone have anyone want, we don't have the names of the petitioners here. If not, then Mr. Byron will have a short presentation. Mr. Byron.
It appears that there's no petitions here, so on behalf of the board, I'm presenting what this impact of this article will do. Currently, right now, we elect every 3 years a treasurer to the office on behalf of the town of Litchfield. The RSA also allows the town to make that an appointed position of treasurer by the Board of Selectmen. If approved, we would continue electing the treasurer to office. In fact, you'll see that on the ballot, I believe, this March. And the elected treasurer would serve in office until March of 2012. At that point, then, the Board of Selectmen would assume the duties of recruiting and the appointment of a treasurer. At that point also, the Board of Selectmen could, if it so desires, perform both a criminal as well as a financial background check before the appointment. Currently, that is not done as it is an elected position, and we are not able to do that. The Board of Selectmen as well on this article has taken no position.
Any discussion on Article 9? Hearing none. Okay, you'll find it on the ballot as written. Whoa! Mr. Lambert, I didn't see your hand up, sorry.
I've heard that a lot. Just save time, can I just speak at this microphone?
As a citizen, you mean?
Yes.
Go ahead. He's a citizen.
This is really quick. This gives us the same benefit. We can reach outside of our town borders if we have to get someone who's qualified and can help us solve this problem if we ever need to replace them. This actually gives us a benefit because we still have to do validation and background checks and all that kind of stuff. We have a hard time getting people to run for this position because it's complicated. This will simplify lots of things. The Board of Selectmen has currently had to go and find someone to fill this position in the past. This makes everyone's life better. That's my position. George Lambert, 3 Lidston Lane, Litchfield, New Hampshire.
Yeah, go ahead.
Susan Seabrook, 18 Bear Run Drive. I agree with Mr. Lambert, and I think more importantly than whatever he mentioned, well, almost more importantly, is the resume. I think the criminal check, if it's not been done in the past, that probably should be something that Terry should bring up to New Hampshire state laws when she goes to our conference. That's atrocious that that's not done.
Mr. Byron, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just for clarity's sake, we're confirming with town council whether somebody outside of the town of Litchfield can be appointed as treasurer or not. We'll have an answer for you shortly.
Okay. Now, wait, that was the last discussion, right? I can't go on to something else now, can I?
Okay. Mr. Moderator, if I may have a moment then?
You may have a moment.
Yes, and one of the things that the Board of Selectmen had been doing is this year we started our deliberative session at 12 o'clock. We'd like to get a sense as to whether people would like us to start earlier in the day, and remember next year we'll be going to a joint session earlier in the day or later in the day. Some people argue that it's better for childcare because of sporting activities and things like that to do it later in the day. Other people say, well, it's better because I can get there, get the whole day done, and then have something to do that evening. So I would ask the moderator, with due respect, if he could do an AM/PM poll.
Those in favor of an AM deliberative session, please say aye. Aye. Those in favor of a PM session, say aye. Aye. AM. More people are in favor of an AM session than a PM session.
Okay, so when the Board of Selectmen as well as the school board get together, we'll bring that up and try to
Great.
get some.
Now, is this before 10 o'clock or after 10 o'clock?
If you want to poll people.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Will the Board of Selectmen be buying lunch?
I think that would have to be added to the budget, wouldn't it?
I will only commit to buying lunch if the Budget Committee appropriates and puts into the budget that money. And I'm sure that Mr. Spencer will be spoken to by his wife if he does that.
Yeah, you gotta go up there and say something.
Susan, you had made a comment about a lot of towns doing background checks on the treasurers and all. There are a lot of towns that are appointing their treasurers because of what happened in Litchfield. There are several towns that now will do background checks and have the selectmen choose who, appoint a treasurer. No, Litchfield is not, and that we've had this problem already, so that's why we're trying to fix it. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll turn this over to Town Council David LaFever for a response on the appointment.
I think Selectman Lambert was correct. I don't believe that the treasurer can be appointed from, the treasurer does not have to be a resident.
Okay, so further discussion, Article 9? Hearing none? you'll find it on the ballot as written. We're at the end. So before we close, I'd like to remind everyone that the warrant articles discussed tonight will appear on the ballot as written or, if amended, as amended. There is no next deliberative session. There is a candidates night that they're scheduling on March 5th. I don't have the details. I think it's going to be here. Don't have the specific times yet, but you're all welcome to attend and listen to the candidates. Voting day is on Tuesday, March 8th. With that, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. Oh, and please, you have yellow yes/no ballots. Please